towards the microphone when you speak.
Thank you for that heads up. Okay, then why don't we go ahead and call our meeting to order? If I could ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence, and then we'll ask Ms. Tati to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shall we call the roll?
Present. Here. Here.
Here.
Here. Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mr. Stein?
Here.
Mrs. Tyler?
Here.
Thank you. We have a full house at the library. Just a moment before we actually begin the agenda explanation. Obviously, we're in a different place. We were in council chambers. But we thought it was prudent, after some guidance with Crystal Miller from the health department, we thought we should have come back to the library where we have greater social distance opportunities. I especially appreciated at our last council meeting the fact that Ms. Hambrick, having recently completed surgery, not to violate your privacy, but having recently completed surgery and feeling vulnerable, wore a mask the whole meeting, and I thought that was appropriate. Thank you. But obviously, the Delta variant is very real, and I thought in the council's best interest that we come back to this environment. And we can be masked up until we need to speak or until we're seated. And I think that everybody will feel good about that. So thank you all for that. As we'll go through this as we would, as we had before. Each of you should have a copy of the minutes from our last meeting. If you'd like to look at those for any possible corrections or additions.
Make a motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Motion's been made for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you, Tammy. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved. Each council member should have also received a copy of the latest
And I think it's inevitable. Everybody has an agenda. And the problem with appointing, with appointing a public officer, number one, that public officer is gonna, to have that job, is gonna have to serve your agenda, which removes that public officer from contact with or service to the people, the public agenda, whatever that may be, the consensus of all the population, which she would, if she were elected, she would have to consider, and if she's appointed, she doesn't have to consider that. So her agenda becomes your agenda. The second problem, and this is a rampant problem in the town government at the moment, is that people who are serving in public office have their own personal agendas that they feel totally free to execute against, I know in my case, against the will of the constituents, of the common people. So there's just two big liabilities to appointing a public officer. She serves the mayor's agenda, or he serves the mayor's agenda, and it puts that person at liberty to exercise his own or her own agenda with no consideration of the people who would elect them. If they were elected, they would have to consider the agenda of the people who elected them. That's obviously more democratic. In the 18th century, when this country was founded, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington were all I guess you could say the big shots, or the big instigators of the new American Republic. Jefferson came from a farm background. He said every citizen should be a farmer. Because not only because it would increase production, but because he knows that farmers don't take orders as a rule for people. Farmers either look at the land and decide what they're going to do, or they talk among themselves to decide what they're going to do. But Alexander Hamilton was appointed by Washington to be the Secretary of the Treasury.
Yes, sir.
And Hamilton knew that if he imported industry from Europe, mechanized industry from Europe, he could have, because he was the Secretary of the Treasury, he was in charge of capital. He knew that
Steve,
he could control.
you're far astray from Georgetown electing or appointing a clerk. So
Jefferson said everyone should be a farmer.
Yes, sir.
And the reason being, he knew that capital and heavy industry could control people and influence people where they have to work in factories, which is the case now. I've had Tim Thompson tell me, you're going to go to Kroger and buy all your food, just like we do.
Steve, this has nothing to do with the city clerk issue.
What's that?
This has nothing to do with the city clerk issue. You've made your point. You are not in favor of us making the clerk an appointed position.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, how much time do I have to speak?
Oh, you're done. You've had your 4 minutes.
Was it just 4 minutes to limit?
Yes, sir.
Have you got a clock? You been timing it? Does somebody have a clock?
Steve, would you please sit? Thank you.
Well, I'm not finished.
Also signed up for public comment is Tim Thompson to discuss the fire prevention parade.
Hello, everybody. I am here to talk about the fire prevention parade. Before I do that, I'd like to take a second. On July 29th, 101 Airport Road became 101 Jacobs Drive. And that couldn't happen without all of you all. So I really appreciate that. Mayor, I appreciate you all doing that. It was a great event for the fire department. It was a great event for the city as a whole. It honored the late battalion chief, Johnny Jacobs, and his wife, Katie, when we passed that on to you all. So thank you all again, Public Works, and everybody that was involved with I have met with Michael Wilson. He's a lieutenant on the Scott County Fire Department. And him and I typically work together for the fire prevention parade. This year, we're going to do the fire prevention parade on October 21st, and I'm asking permission for that. I am going to return it back to the evening. I think that would be a lot better. We've been trying to do some stuff differently over the last couple of years, trying to incorporate Safety Day and trying to build that up and then trying to build up the parade. But this year, we're going to go back to the evening. We're going to do that, and then we're going to try to maybe just jump in with the hospital this year for their Safety and Health Day. That way, we're not kind of doubling up. And honestly, I'm worried about spending a lot of effort and then maybe it not being able to actually happen because of COVID. October 21st, we'd love to have all of y'all participate. We'll have the tower truck out there. You all feel free to jump on board. And thank you all again.
Thank you.
What time is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. That helps. It's going to be around 7 o'clock, and I'll get that out when I fill out the paperwork for Tracy. We're going to, right there at dusk, and I was looking at sunset, and it's around 6:48, so 6:37, something like that, but I'll get it out to you guys.
Where would we be lining up at?
We're going to be lining up on Memorial Drive just like we have been. And I am going to change it up a little bit too. I talked with Ms. Hoffman earlier today as well. As far as the route this year, we're going to go back to everything that we used to do. We're going to go down Main Street, turn on to Broadway, go up Jackson. We're going to return back to what it used to be. I think that was better. We've tried some different things and trying to make it a little bit bigger, but we're going to return back to our roots this year.
All right.
Does he need a motion with that? Does he need a motion to?
Yes.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any questions for Tim? All in favor, say aye.
But 7 o'clock, I apologize, but 7?
7 o'clock?
7, yes. We'll make it 7.
What time I put
What
in?
day, Tim?
October 21st. We try to keep the third Saturday of October because that gets us past fall break, college homecoming, and then that, which I think it's around that, but it's going to be in the or we're going to be in the evening, so it's not going to mess with college. You're not there anymore, so you don't.
I appreciate that, though.
Did you say 10/21?
Yes.
Yeah. Tim, it's-
October 21. That's on a Thursday, not a Saturday.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I thought you said Saturday.
Everything back to what it used to be. Yeah.
I'm on board now.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
And that's a really fun event. There's a place on the fire truck for you if you'd like to.
Right around the fire truck.
Okay, were there any other public comments? If not, we have a fiscal year 2020 audit presentation. There we are.
Thank you all for having me. I'm going to sit down since I've got paper in front of me. You all should have, I'm Heather Cochran with RFH. I think I've met probably all of you before. In front of you, you should have the green-bound audited financial statements. This is, your all's financial statements, our audit report to you all on those financial statements. And so I want to point out just a few pieces of information in the audited financial statements. The first is actually our independent auditor's report. That's on page 1 and 2 of the report. It's a letter on our letterhead that at the very top is in bold, independent auditor's report. On page 1, the most important kind of paragraph on that page that you all want to always pay attention to is under opinions. And it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. I always tell you all, that's as good as it gets. It's a clean opinion. That's what you're looking for, okay? Because you all are a government, and because you all spent a certain amount of federal funds this year, there are 2 additional reports. They're in the back of that bound booklet. The first one is on page 63 and 64. So this report you have every year. It's called our Independent Auditor's Report on Internal Control and Compliance. And so what this report is it's basically our report to you all saying, did we find any compliance issues with laws and regulations, or did we find any internal control matters that would be considered to be what we call significant deficiencies in internal control or material weaknesses. So if you were to read through this letter, you would see that we didn't find any material weaknesses in internal controls, and we didn't have any instances of non-compliance that we need to report to you all. So again, for this letter, that's kind of as good as it gets, okay? And again, that's on page 63 and 64. The next report is on page 65 and 66. Now this year, you all had more federal money for the June 30th, 2020. So it was mostly the CARES Act money that you all got in before year end. And so because of that, whenever you spend over $750,000 in federal funds, you have to have an additional, audit. So basically an audit of that federal money. And so this report on page 65 and 66 goes into that. It's the independent auditor's report on compliance for each major program in accordance with the uniform guidance. On page 65, there is an opinion on each major federal program. It's on the very bottom of the page. And it says, in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs. So again, that's a clean opinion for the federal money. Again, that's as good as it gets, okay? So those are our 3 reports to you in these bound financial statements. The rest of this information, as you can see, this is 68 pages of information, I think. Those are your financial statements. We help you all put them together, but they're your financial statements, just going over your results of operations. Just want to point out a couple of kind of unique things. Page 10 and 11, this is kind of the one time that you all are going to see kind of the whole government together regarding your balance sheet. So your statement of net position is your balance sheet. This includes everything you all have in the bank, any investments, anything that you all owe on debt, capital assets, buildings, vehicles, everything together. It also includes Georgetown Municipal. So the whole city is included in these 2 pages of financial information. So page 10, again, is what we would consider to be your balance sheet, your statement of net position, total assets, and what we call deferred outflows of resources. They're similar to assets. $256,254,877 is your total. And again, that's for all of your governmental activities as well as what we call your business type activities, which is primarily Georgetown Municipal. So that's your total assets. Liabilities, total liabilities, $86,572,000. And again, that includes any bonds, any long-term debt, anything like that is in that number. And then your net position, that's the theoretical amount of what's left over. So total assets minus total liabilities, what's left over. Total net position, $165,191,000, okay? And again, this also includes, one of the things we always talk about is that net pension liability and net, what we call OPEB, other post-employment benefit liability. That's related to your all's participation in the CERS system. Since the CERS is underfunded, all of the individual governments have to pick up their piece of the underfunded liability. That does not mean you haven't paid your contributions timely. It just means that because the plan is underfunded, that gets pushed out to you all. So you will see, on your net pension liability, there's a number on there, $46 million for everything as a whole related to the pension. So I just always want to point that out because you don't always see that. You don't see that in your kind of internal generated financials. It's kind of like once a year you kind of get to see that information.
Well, they changed that reporting requirement 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a few years ago. The pension went on first, and then the other post-employment benefit, which is the health insurance, that piece went on a couple of years ago. So it was kind of phased in for both pieces.
We've always had the liability, but it just wasn't reported.
Right. It always kind of existed out at CERS. Whenever it was underfunded, it was out there on their financial statements. But now it gets pushed down to all the individual governments. And everybody does it. All the cities have that same, a similar liability, just depending on how big they are in relation to the whole. It's based on your contributions versus everybody else's is how you get your piece of that liability, okay? So page 10, page 11, that's your income statement kind of for the government as a whole. You all did increase, change in net position was an increase of $4,690,000. And again, this has Georgetown Municipal, it has everything in it. This particular statement is a little unique in that it's not the way you normally think of your governmental funds. So we just always want to point that out, that's your income statement. And then if you get back onto page 12, page 14, This is your balance sheet for your governmental funds, your income statement for your governmental funds. You had total revenues, little over 36 million. That was up from the previous year, and total expenditures of a little under 36 million, which was down from the previous year, which ultimately resulted in you increasing your fund balance in the current year versus the prior year. Are there any questions? That's all I really wanted to point out to you on the financials. Obviously you all got additional CARES money in 2020. I know there's more in 2021 and kind of going forward. So there's a lot of federal money coming through the cities at this time. So there will probably, for the foreseeable future, you'll continue to have probably a federal audit on that money, like we had this year. You all don't always have that because you don't always get over that $750,000.
Any questions? It's always good to see a clean report.
Yes.
And particularly for the new council members, what I always find of real value to these audit reports are the notes. They're extensive notes. And if you read through the notes, they really explain how we operate and how some of these funds operate.
Yeah.
So it lays it out in a very understandable way.
And governmental financials can be confusing. You've got some different basis of the way we account for things. And, people go to school for a long time to figure out how to do this, and then to give it to you all and be like, here, understand all of it. The notes can help. And reading through them can really help you understand how things are accounted for and what, the schedule of debt is in there if you're interested in, when do principal payments come due, when is interest due. That can be helpful as well.
Well, one thing's for sure, this council has been through some real financial deliberations in their short time together, and I think the budget approval process and what we learned and financial analysis that we've been going over ever since you started, added to these notes, begins to give a pretty comprehensive picture.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Does this require approval of or acceptance? It's just a presentation? Okay. If there are no other questions, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Stacy, thank you for the fact that we are on the request are compliant, and we are where we're supposed to be with the way we behave during an audit is due to your office, so thank you. Let's see. Well, item 7 on the agenda, mayor's comments. Just a couple of things. First, and one of the most important, I think, is Willow was asked, and some other council members have asked, but Willow in particular, about how we will approach the public to gather their input for discussion about ARPA funds. And, Andrew has put together this basic timeline that we've laid out. I did want to emphasize that as we approach this, I've seen some editorial support recently for local governments actually pumping the brakes a little bit on not gathering public input, but on reaching final decisions about ARPA money. The guidelines are real specific. We have until December 31st, 2024 to make final decisions about how we'll use the ARPA money we've been allocated. So there's significant amount of time to plan and take input and thoughtfully approach this. Then we have until December 31st of 2025 to actually expend those funds. I've seen some support lately for looking at what our wish list is or what our needs list is as our citizens express that to us. but also some sentiment for keeping some of this, the old saying, keep some of the powder dry. We don't know what potential future stages a Delta variant or anything else may look like. And if we have other business impacts. So just to keep in mind that that's a large sum of money. Our original allocation was $9,060,000. So far, you've allocated $2.4 million of it in the current year's budget. Some of that for storm sewer projects and some for income recovery from during the COVID period. And this was a suggested timeline. Andrew, anything you'd like to add to that?
Hey, if you all see anything on the timeline that needs to be added or changed, and something we missed, or something you want us to fix, just tell us. Put a pretty, nice long timeline in there, you get some time to get it right. But before our next budget.
Does this begin to meet the expectation that you had, Will?
Yes, I think it looks good. Thank you.
And any feedback y'all would like to give us on the schedule, we'd be glad, and use this kind of as a basis, any feedback you have, let us know. Something really fun. This last weekend, they had the second annual Elkhorn Float Fest. It was to be the third annual, but it was the second annual Elkhorn Float Fest. They had 300 people.
Wow.
The weather was perfect, and they had just a huge crowd of people floating out there. Heard real compliments about our Public Works Department and how much they helped make that a success, and the fire department. The fire department was really engaged in that. For those of us that have worked real closely on the budget for a handful of years, the boat, Stacy, was used extensively during the flood. We debated over the boat purchase about 4 different budget cycles before we finally bought it for them. But they had it, and it was put to use this weekend very well. So thank you all for that help. And that was next year you may want to sign up for that. Also, I wanted to make sure the council was clear on the timeline. We will be opening the RFPs on the solid waste information, the garbage disposal information on the 24th. And we think after those are so complicated and going through those, it will be at least the first meeting in September before the committee and we are going to be ready to bring a recommendation from the council. I'd heard some people express a faster timeline. I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that it would probably be closer to that timeline before we do that. You knew we had applied, but we have received notice that we have been funded on a CDBG utility assistance grant. The city will receive $200,000 and Scott County will receive $200,000 to help with overdue utility bills. GMWSS, I think Chase is going to help us coordinate some of that, but other utilities will be available as well.
Mayor, how will the constituents know how to apply? Is it going to be advertised or?
I think it will be heavily advertised. Devin, do you know from the application?
And the way they're administering those funds in all cities is through their community action partnerships. So Bluegrass Community Action Partnership will be working with Bluegrass Ag to administer those funds. So that's kind of our local liaison that will be, they'll know all the information and documentation that citizens will need to submit. They'll be working with the local nonprofits to get the word out to their clients. So I know folks at the Amen House, Elizabeth Village, Gathering Place, all of those
Thankfully, there's an administrator named, Community Action Agency. Just wanted to let the council know that we will be having an interlocal committee meeting on Thursday of this week. And your council representatives on the interlocal committee are Mark and Tammy and David. There are 3 magistrates that are appointed as well. The judge and I will be there. We haven't had an interlocal committee meeting for a while. And we've got a lot of issues to discuss. Andrew and I met with Judge Covington on Friday for almost an hour and a half just to put the agenda together, just to make sure that we've got all the pieces that we need to touch. And we won't be able to do deep dives on all this, but some of this will simply be reports and updates and what next steps might be. But we're going to be talking with planning and zoning about the long-term question that the court and the council has had about the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance, and when those presentations are going to come to the council and the court. We share those interests, so we'll be hearing about that. We'll touch briefly on code enforcement. Tim's changed some reporting that the magistrates wanted, and that seems to have worked well. We're just going to touch on it and hopefully move on to make sure. We're going to go into some detail about electrical inspection and our intention to withdraw from that interlocal agreement. An update on our recycling center, since we currently have a drop-off center that is going to be impacted with the Rumkey facility open now and us looking at advertising. We're going to include some conversation about animal control and what authorities they have within the city. We've been talking about this, Karen, since I was mayor the first time, and we're still talking about animal control authority within the city. But we need to talk about those things. We'll also talk about our cemetery interlocal and the fact that we're rapidly running out of space in Paupers Field. And we have to make some design decisions about how we go forward with Georgetown Cemetery. There'll be some discussion about Parks and Rec. We've got a boatload. We're going to start at 8 o'clock and hopefully get people to work at a reasonable time.
What location there?
It's right here.
Right here?
Oh, you're right here. So we can spread out.
The room will be divided in half, but yes, we'll be here. Well, I've talked a lot, but there's one more thing I have to touch on. That is probably my biggest issue of the evening. I need to discuss with the council, Chase and Andrew and I need to discuss with the council our South Sewer Line contract. And because this is a special call meeting, since we had to change locations, we sent out a late agenda change and added a discussion of the South Sewer Line contract. Don't necessarily need to talk about the whole transaction, but we do want to talk about the contract. And we're facing a series of time deadlines that seem to be in conflict with one another. It's a real chicken or the egg question, which comes first. Council will recall that we've already absorbed a $1.4 million price increase on this project. We did that fairly recently in all your all's tenure.
That $1.4 million price increase came from material costs going up during certain delays that we had. We had right-of-way acquisition and other issues that we spent more time in court than we anticipated. The $1.4 million will be funded through the KIA loan, the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority loan. But of course, that means a slightly higher debt service payment. Before you approved that the last time, the water board had to look at it and make sure that they agreed. And they agreed with that $1.4 million being handled in that way through their current rate structure, even though it put their sewer model not as robust as they'd like for it to be. In fact, Greg had showed it drove the sewer model into a slight deficit, and they pride themselves on never having a deficit. So they could tolerate in the business cycle, they could tolerate that slight deficit fine. Bringing a rate increase back to you all, however, was not fine. So we worked our way through that. We now have more time has passed, and we are facing another price increase. Right before we finalize the contract, and when we have to, Chase, I'm going to get you up here to bail me out real quick. We've got two things going on. We have a contractor that's got to lock in a pipe price, or we face the potential of a significant increase in pipe cost. But to give the contractor the go-ahead to lock that price in, we have to know the monetary value of what this current price increase that we're facing for the materials increase over the last bit of time. We've asked the contractor, we will not have that hard dollar amount from the contractor until Wednesday. Is that right, Chase? Because he's waiting to hear from subs. So we've asked that contractor to give us what they think the worst case scenario is. Can't lock it in, tell me what my outside exposure is. It's $1 million. What they more anticipate the cost being, when they can pin it down, is in the $600,000 range. We could go back to KIA and increase the size of the KIA loan again. That funding is available to us. However, to do that would require us to ask the water board to service that debt within the rate structure we've already given them. And they're not going to be comfortable with that. They're just not. I'm not going to ask them to do that. I don't think we as a council should ask them to do that. I do think what we as a council should do, we cannot open this package back up. I don't think we should open the package back up. I think it's too dangerous to do so. I think that this additional price increase needs to be handled completely outside of the existing financial transaction. And the only way we can do that is if the city and the county go together and use some ARPA funding to take care of this price increase outside the boundaries of the current transaction. Then we can preserve everybody's position. I don't think there is an alternative, and I think this alternative is not only available to us, it's very attractive. The ARPA funds very specifically can be used for this purpose. If the city and the county split this, it'll be an amount between $300,000 to $500,000. When our ARPA funding originally was $9 million and the county's is $11 million. To salvage the project that will solve our greatest environmental and humanitarian needs that we have in Scott County. I've talked with the judge. He is in favor of taking the request to the court. The court has been supportive of this project in the past. The reality is this problem exists in the county. And we're involved only because we own a sewer company. So, what I wanted to do is let you all know of this situation, of this circular crunch that Jason the contractor are in. And I need to break the cycle that they're in. And the only way that I know I can do it is by asking you to supply a portion of ARPA money to help. And after you ask your questions of me and Chase, Andrew, then I can't vote tonight, but I sure would like a good, strong straw indicator so that we can try and save the South Sewer Line project. That's a bunch to throw out there. So who's got the first questions?
Okay. Actually, I don't think it's a bad plan. Because just hearing what you're saying, as you're saying it now, I don't think it's a bad plan to do that. I think that's kind of what that type of money is intended to do. With it, it will keep a price for the consumer that we don't have to go back and raise again. And we've said we've done this because I got a lot of complaints or comments or issues and phone calls on when my water bill went up. And I told them it was already permitted. So I really don't think the consumer wants us to go back and then add another $5 or whatever it be on top of what we've just done and was planned to do. So I don't think you can go that way. And ARPA money anyway is taxpayers' money. So you're taking it out of one pocket but saving it in their other pocket. So from just what you've explained tonight, I don't think it's a bad idea at all. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a point of clarification, you said that it would be $300,000 to $500,000 just with us, or is that number split with the county?
We think the range, the total cost of the range willow is $600,000 to $1 million.
Okay.
I'm optimistic that the county would be our partner, and we could reduce our expense to between $300,000 and $500,000.
Okay.
However, I don't think that would happen, that the county would reject our request. But I believe in this project so much, and I think it is so necessary that should that happen, I would come back and ask us to fund it all. I don't think we can lose this project.
How long has this been going on? 3 years?
The environmental crisis is at least 2 decades old. And when I started this term 7 years ago, we drew a line in the sand and said, we're going to do something. And we've been at this for 7 years.
Question. Do you foresee the possibility that it'll go up again? Or if
I'm
we
sorry?
like it, do you see any possibility that it may go up again in the foreseeable future? Or do you feel like we're locked in once we do this, take this action?
All of our contracts, as I'm sure the city contracts, material price increases are not the liability of the city or the utility once a construction contract is executed. This is unique in that we have not had the ability due to the bid hold period, getting the approval on all of our funding sources, and then the reapproval. And the biggest two are the user agreement, getting that executed, which we did just recently, and then the longest property acquisition period. We have not had the opportunity to lock in. We didn't have all the pieces in place to execute the construction contract. So we are on the hook for these increases. If we can execute that contract, which we hope to do Friday, that liability per the contracted is shifted to the contractor from us. So will there be additional change orders once construction happens? Yes, absolutely.
Always.
However, we're in a better position to negotiate those with the contractor. Right now, we're not under contract, our backs are against the wall. And it's not anybody's fault that this is the situation. It's just unique because of it took November through March to negotiate the user agreement. And then even after we went twice to circuit court for property acquisition, we still had to extend further. So I hope that helps, but the key is getting everything that we need, whether it be council and court approval for moving forward with this. Once we are able to execute the construction contract, we shift that liability to the contractor off of us.
I'd like to add to that theoretically, you know, if we waited until now to bid it out, you're going to have the same material price
Sure.
increases.
Yes, sir, Todd.
And knowing that it is, but does this fit well within the guidelines of use of ARPA money?
Like a glove.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that question, just because I didn't want anything to be able to come back and somebody say, well, you kind of, it really rode close to the edge on it. I just wanted to make sure that we were fine with that, no problems, issues.
Can I go back to Councilwoman Tingle's names, just so you're aware, back before I brought the project to the council in March, when we took it to the board, there was serious concern on the part of the board at that part, whether they were comfortable funding this within our current rate structure. So when Mary Prather asked me last week if this is something we could go back to the board, I don't really know that the board would be comfortable enough within our current rate structure to absorb this additional overage. And I think that's where we've landed on.
I have a feeling they might have, if that's what we had said to do, that's what they probably would have done. But I think in a roundabout way, then it would just come back to us next year with your budget, to then go back and ask for an additional on top of, because next year's budget's gonna have an additional anyway.
Correct.
And, because we did do it for 3 years, 5 years, so it would had to have an additional, it wouldn't wait until the end of that 5 years.
That's correct.
So I think this is what the money, like Todd's asking, but I think this is exactly what the money should be used for, because it's going to be used for the good of the whole. And some other things we could use it for might be good for this group or this group, but this is one of those that seems to be good for the whole, because pretty much everybody in town pays a water bill. So I think it will help the whole, not a small portion, even though we are helping that end. But so I would rather not see go back on people's water bills right now.
Me too.
They're having some issues handling all the fees we're putting on top of the water bills currently.
Me too.
Yeah, Chase had to remind me of the session that I had to sit through with a couple of the commissioners. In particular, Lewis Wolf is very good with numbers. And he's very conservative with numbers. And he helps me think through those things. And Lewis, actually called Lewis this morning and let him know that we had this problem. And what I was going to ask the council to do is take the problem completely away from them and not have any expectations that they go further. He said to let you all know that he fully endorsed that plan as a water board member, and because he said he really would have struggled had I come back to him. So, Chase, in what sequence do you need some things to happen? So, look, I've asked the council that we may ask them for like a strong straw vote. We just need to know if the council is comfortable with this approach that we've outlined for this price increase.
Right. We can execute the construction contract at this point based on the approvals that the board and council have already given, and that's for the original contract amount. It also includes the first overage that we had for what we brought to you back in March we could do that at any point. We didn't feel strongly enough that we wanted to do that this week without at least having this discussion with the council tonight, knowing that there is another up to and not to exceed $1 million out there. I think that given what Mayor Prather's proposed of talking to you all tonight, seeing not an official action, but if we do feel comfortable that this is a use of ARPA money that the council would likely proceed forward, I think that is what we need to know in order to execute the contract this week. And also what that does again is it's going to save us hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on pipe prices. We have a hold on our pipe price that expires Wednesday. So we need to make decisions. The contractor said they would go ahead and lock that in if we were going to sign the contract Friday.
Mayor, a couple of quick questions. First of all, I think this is an appropriate use of these funds. You and I talked over the weekend, so I had a little bit of a heads up, but it does still seem like a bit of a rush. I guess I wonder why the contractor, and maybe I don't understand the whole situation, but why we didn't know about it 4 weeks ago, or 6 weeks ago, or 8 weeks ago. I mean, things have been in motion for quite some time.
If I can, I think I can answer your question, just a little bit of the history the last 12 months or so. Back in late summer of last year, early fall, the funding agencies, both KIA and the administration of the 319 grant that is going to this project, they said, we've earmarked this money for a number of years and we don't see progress. We know you've done design. We know that it's factored into your rates, but we don't see progress, and this is money that could be going to other communities in need. So they pretty much said, get this thing bid. And so we opened bids back on October 29th of last year, and that came with a 90-day hold. And so we looked at, that was the point that we thought we were close on the user agreement. That quickly we knew that wasn't going to happen, so we asked for the 150-day hold. That's where that first overage came in, was price increases that extended from that 90th day to the 150th day. The contractor is kind of in limbo here, been holding it really. We don't have another bid hold agreement currently. We did through March, and they hadn't really looked at their prices again, because right now prices are good for about 24 or 48 hours on construction materials. And then a manufacturer, especially with PVC pipe, which is what this job is, that pipe lot is sold. So we met again, we've met a few times recently, but they said, a lot of their subcontractors in the pump station, which is the part that's unknown right now, a lot of their subs, their electrician, their mechanical subs, they've moved on to other projects. They're having to reprice that part. So it's not just materials, it's some of the labor factor in there as well. And they just have not, we did not ask for that quick enough. And I don't know that they would have given it to us in either way, because that's an effort on their part for a project that they're still skeptical. They don't have a signed contract, and they won the bid back in October of last year. So it's easily the most complicated from an administrative standpoint design and construction project that I've ever been a part of. You've got, again, unprecedented dealings with property and easement acquisition that we've had to go through that's delayed us this spring and into the summer. The user agreement, those are the two things. It's extended. The contractor's just now updating his prices because they feel for the first time in a number of months that we're serious about this.
Okay. Well, the good news is we have the ability to act quick. Our group can respond to this tonight and give you an indication. And if the ARPA funds aren't the best source, we've got other avenues to deal with the issue. What does this put the total project cost at, though?
19.2 plus 2.4.
sorry, 19.2?
19.2 million was the original, and this 1.4 for the first overage and a not to exceed of 1.0 on this one.
And part of that includes the privilege fee, right, for this area? Is that part of the 21 as well?
That and the privilege fee is being set up to repay part of that construction cost, part of that overall cost.
But not what we're talking about tonight, is it? That won't have any impact at all.
Yes, part of the total project will be refunded and paid for through the privilege fee as people tie onto the infrastructure.
Right. But what we're talking about paying for ourselves, that's not gonna change what's already been set in place a while back, right? I mean, we're covering that. That's not gonna be the responsibility of somebody. Or maybe it is. Maybe I don't understand.
I hope you're right.
Yes, I think I
Would
know
that
where you're
qualify
going.
as supplanting under the funds? I would assume that's what it sounds like to me. We shouldn't be reimbursed for the cost of that,
Yes.
the ARPA funds used for the infrastructure. I mean, we can double check on that, but that sounds like the definition of supplanting, spending ARPA funds and then asking for a per acre, including that in the per acre. So that's how I would interpret that, but we can confirm that.
The privilege fee is based on the 19.2 plus the 1.4. It will not change with the overage of an additional up to $1 million.
So did you say 1.4 or 2.4?
We've already approved the 1.4.
We've already approved the one.
Okay. But did we get the 21.6, Greg? Is that the number you, 21.6? That's the total.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jason's curious, what was the original?
15.8, I believe. Yes, to get back, the privilege fee is based on 21.6, not 22.6. Thank you for helping.
Yeah, and this shouldn't, and this, the council's willingness to work with the county to take this price increase should leave all of that transaction intact.
Yes,
I mean, that's what our hope
that's the goal, yes.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
what we're being asked to do tonight, I guess you're trying to get a straw vote to see.
Mark, just if I want to get a feel if the council's really comfortable with stepping in and using a portion of our ARPA money to salvage this deal.
If we agree to do that, what happens hypothetically if the county says, no, we're not willing to increase our funding? Did we take on the entire $600,000 to $1 million, that whole expenditure?
If they said no, we'd be facing that. They were our partner on the original. We matched 250 for the local contribution. This is a community issue that Georgetown is working closely, GMWSS is working closely with the city and the county to solve a real environmental problem that is in Scott County. I'm confident it's doing that. But I'm not a magistrate. And they could, and if it is, I'm gonna come back and ask you for their part too.
Mayor, at this point, we have to move forward. You know, one way or the other, we have to move forward. It's too significant, we've come too far, and it's time to get it done. So, whatever we need to do, let's get it done.
Yeah, and Mayor, it sounds like doing this last bid is, we're gonna be able to move quicker than we have been able, and it's gonna be like the end. So
This is the
we can-
final.
Yes.
This is the final signature that I need to make with the user agreement, all of the easements. This is the remaining item.
Yeah, I agree, Mayor, we need to move forward either way.
Thank you. I think it's a pretty strong indicator. You all know everything that Chase and I know. And Chase, should act accordingly.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work, Chase.
Thank you.
Item 8, under city attorney, we have second reading of an ordinance awarding a telecommunication services franchise. Tracy?
An ordinance confirming the sale and awarding a non-exclusive franchise to Great Lakes Communications LLC for placement of facilities for telecommunication services within the public rights of way of the city of Georgetown, consistent with the terms of ordinance 2021-05. Summary. 1. Awards the bid of the non-exclusive telecommunication service franchise established in ordinance 2021-05 to Great Lakes Communications LLC. 2. Authorizes the mayor to sign the telecommunications services franchise agreement. 3. Provides for repeal of inconsistent laws, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the city clerk's office, 100 North Fourth Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40224, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read for the first time July 26, 2021. Publicly read the second time August 9, 2020.
Thank you. The sponsors there are Ms. Mitchell and Mr. Hampton. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Thank you. And second. Thank you, Greg.
I have a question on the page that's been inserted into the packet about from Linda, Ames. The questions get satisfied that she's got on here?
Yes.
All that got satisfied?
Any other questions? If not, shall we call the roll?
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Saints?
Yes.
Mrs. Hammer?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Leslie?
Yes.
Mrs. Leslie Mitchell?
Yes.
That carries. Thank you. Item B under city attorney is second reading of an ordinance changing the position of city clerk treasurer from elected to appointed. Sponsors are Mark Showalter and Tammy Mitchell.
An ordinance abolishing the elected office of city clerk treasurer, establishing the appointed office of city clerk treasurer, and amending Georgetown Code of Ordinances, section 2-136 and 2-137 to provide for consistency with this change. Summary. 1. Abolishes the elected office of city clerk treasurer, establishes the appointed office of city clerk treasurer, and provides that the appointment of the city clerk treasurer shall be made by the mayor with the removal of the city council, the approval of the city council. 2. Amends code section 2-137 to provide that the cost of the city clerk treasurer's bond premium shall be borne by the city. 3. Provides for repeal of inconsistent laws, severability of provisions, and effective date upon passage and publication. The acknowledgement that this ordinance shall have no effect on the current city clerk term, which shall expire on December the 31st, 2022. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the city clerk's office on 100 Fourth Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40224, or www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read the first time July 26, 2021, publicly read the second time and passed August 9th, 2021.
Thank you.
Motion.
Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
There's a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna vote in favor of it, but it's, I kind of miss the fact of giving up the tradition that Georgetown is unique in the fact that we're the only ones that's had city clerk, an elected city clerk all these years, but, all the other cities have moved to having appointed clerks, and so I'll get on the bandwagon with all the others, but over the years, Georgetown's been fortunate that we've had elected city clerks that have done well, worked well with the community, worked well with the council and the mayor. And so I'm kind of sad to give up the uniqueness of Georgetown in that respect, but I know all the other cities have given it up, so it's probably time for us to let go of tradition, which I have a hard time doing that, so.
Ditto, Karen.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm kind of the same. I'm not too far off from that. Karen was probably a little bit more staunch on it than I have been in the past, but I get it. It's a new time. There's new issues. And Tracy's done a outstanding job. She's obviously worked extremely well with your administration, as she has with prior administrations. And I did read Mike Scoggins had the tour on. I thought he did a very good job, so.
For the record, I
Did you
didn't
hear
read
that,
it.
Mike?
I didn't read it, Mike, sorry.
Any other questions?
Oh, okay.
Shall we call the roll?
Mrs. Hackett?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mrs. Stengel?
Yes.
Mrs. Leslie Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Leslie?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mrs. Stanford?
Yes.
Curious. You hold the proud distinction of being the final elected city clerk in the city of Garrison.
Not that you
That's a
came in
historical
last.
note. Congratulations. Item 9 on your agenda under dispatch is a municipal order approving a computer backup solution for dispatch. This is budgeted, much needed, and would ask for your approval.
Motion, Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Any questions about that? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Stacy left, I guess. She was, I told her she may need to stay here to help me with item 10 on the agenda. That being a municipal order approving the purchase of 2 gators for the cemetery. There's high finance, and I thought I might need Stacy's approval with that. These are budgeted as well, and the cemetery doesn't.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
And second, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We're now down to item 11, council comments. Mark, can you start over on your end?
You and I had talked about a couple items over the weekend, specifically an item over in the North Broadway area of town. Also, we're trying to look and see about possibly looking at adding 1 or 2 additional handicap parking spots
Thank you, thank you.
in the center of Main Street, kind of in the
Yeah,
center of Main Street.
I thought Eddie and we could look at our downtown parking map and see if they're adequate. We may need to add a handicap slot.
Whereabouts on Broadway are you talking about, Mayor?
Main Street.
Main Street. Whereabouts on Main Street? We've got several.
From Broadway to Court,
Yep.
from Court to Hamilton. Now, there's some that's on scattered out up through there, but there's still quite a few that,
Okay.
they're very.
We added several in front where old Galvin's used to be, in that vicinity. I mean, we quite honestly had complaints from people that said that we added.
In that area, there's.
Because you take them out of service.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're gone now.
But
They're
there's
gone
several
now.
that's on
You mean
Court
because they
Street.
restriped it?
Because they repaved everything,
Yeah.
so, but we need to look at those.
We'll mention it to Eddie.
But on the other side of Main Street, the only 2 that I see are up by the chamber office.
Right.
There's nothing between the corner of Broadway up to Mount Dixon's
Okay.
real estate office. There's nothing there.
I don't know, was there ever anyone there, any there? I don't remember handicap, but we
I'm not
probably
sure
need to
if
add
it was.
some.
I was asked to bring it up, so.
Yeah, there's probably some kind of standard.
That's right.
There is.
Yeah. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm in favor of them. I didn't realize they'd been dissipated or whatever, but at one time we had
Because of the
several and that was.
milling.
We just think because of the milling and the paving, there's been a lot of things that hasn't really put
Yeah.
it back totally, but we'll definitely take a look at it.
Good. Also, Mark and others have gotten calls about Chief, our most well-known homeless person is
Yes.
frequenting North Broadway.
Rock House.
Rock House, that bridge. We're getting some pretty graphic stories at the moment. Thank you, Mark. Anything else? Tammy?
Just one thing, I did, traffic committee. I spoke with Eddie this week about a gentleman on Maple Street who was asking for a handicap spot in front of his house. And Eddie has the address, so if we could get back to him on that.
He mentioned it to me.
Good.
Put it on our agenda.
Hello? Thanks. Todd? No. 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 All right. You made it back in from Bardstown.
I mean, Bardstown.
You've had a big day. Huh?
Good. I'm good, Mayor, thank you.
Yeah. David?
Good too.
Questions that were brought up with the parking issues. The gentleman had contacted me quite some time ago about the colony and having the parking issues in the colony, and you all working on the ordinance and all that. Where are we with that? Because he's contacted me again to ask where we are with fixing parking on one side of the street, not the other.
Well, the traffic committee has thrown it back and forth quite a bit. There's a few of them that we're supposed to go ahead and make that happen, but we are still in the middle of doing our traffic ordinance, which Devin put some stuff together for us.
Yeah, ball's kind of in my court there, so I'll take that one. Connie, Eddie, a smaller group of us got together and picked that back up. So it is being discussed. The ball's in my court to get back to them.
Do we have a time period that you're thinking about might get it done, or can I give you this gentleman's information and go back to checking on those streets that he's complaining about? And
Is it Jamestown Court?
no, I don't think it's. I think it's no. I don't think it's it. I've got it in my phone. I'll get it for you and I'll send it to you, and then maybe you can address his couple of roads that he's got.
I'll put it in an email to Eddie, we're back on our agenda, and we'll give it to Devin.
Okay.
And we did have a time frame. We talked about it several times, and we were trying to, well, I know that there's been a lot going on with COVID and ARPA and all of that, but we did have our meeting just a few weeks ago, so we were trying to get through budget and stuff,
Well,
so.
I'll give you the pictures and I'll give you the roads.
That would be
and stuff, and
perfect.
Maybe you can address at least one or two of them and take care of that. And then the other one, the complaint that you were getting about the homeless being aggressive in North Broadway and stuff, going in and out of some of the businesses and being aggressive and not leaving when asked to leave and stuff like that. So, yeah, that needs to be. And I told her, I said the business in particular that I talked to, she's not aggressive. And I told her, you've got to be aggressive. And then I told her, when she walks in the door, to call you all, to call the police, and have the police come immediately. But the police just told her that they can't do anything. And I said, if they will come when she's there, they can do something to get her out of your business. So I told her to call you all, giving her your number.
Yeah, with the trespasser, if the owner of the property was signed a trespass form, you can trespass from that property, you can trespass from 50%.
Apparently she may be calling you all after the person has left the property. So I told her as soon as she sees her coming toward that business, she needs to call you all immediately so you all can be there. That's what I told her. So, and then the third question I have, how long have we done company now with this audit, with this particular business? It's been years.
It's been few to several.
Yeah, I mean, they're good
2 times
audits.
or 3 times?
Oh, no, it's been longer than that. It's been a long time, I think. I should have asked her while she was here. But if it's as long as I think it is, I mean, it might just be good practice to go out for another audit, different auditor.
Great.
Just from professional experience, it's not really good to change auditing companies that often. Typically what you'll see is they'll change the audit manager.
Okay. And when we've had, is she the same audit manager with it?
I don't know, this might be.
I don't think so.
But
There's been some turnover. Greg's right, that there's a lot of folks tout the merit of a firm becoming very familiar with the way you do business and do that audit more efficiently. But changing an account manager would put a new set of eyes.
yes.
So I'll ask, I'm sorry Stacy's gone, she could answer that for
I'll
us.
say that, I haven't pulled up the municipal orders. We approved their contract in May 2019. They were the previous auditor as well, so I don't know if we did that through RFQ, I'll assume we did.
Pretty sure we
We
did.
did in 2019, so I think we did in 2016 as well, so I think we're on like a 3-year, rotation, but I have heard that as well, that specifically, she mentioned the complexity of government transactions. It's tough as soon as your auditor gets to know your books, and gets to know if they turn over, I think you are more susceptible to letting something slip through, but I think we're on a 3-year rotation, but I'll bring
But
that
I
up to
almost feel like
Stacy.
they've been around for like 9 years or something to 10 years, something to that effect, and that is a long time with one auditor. So, but if you all can check that information for me, that's fine.
And Karen, too, when you have to change auditors, a new auditor coming in, they increase the field work and your auditing fees go down.
Well, I will say this, we had some money that came missing from the city quite a few years ago. We'd had the same auditor for several years, and when we changed auditors, it showed up. So I'm just saying it might be a good practice, but I'm not condemning them as a firm, because I actually think they're a good audit firm, so.
I'll bring it up to Stacy. Like I said, the farthest I can find back of us approving a contract, I assumed your RFQ was 2015. But I think you're probably right, you've probably been with them.
All right, that's fine, you can find the information later, and that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have 3 or 4 constituents, and I've talked to the mayor about this, about the noise ordinance because of the construction that's going on in the old Oxford Road area. And jackhammering is starting often before 8 o'clock. We usually pay attention to the late time of the noise ordinance. When can noise, like all day jackhammering, start? In the morning?
I think it might be
6
6 or 7, but I'll. Eight.
You think it's 6?
Oh, she thinks it's 8. You think it's 8 o'clock?
I'll hold it up and check.
Anyway, they're rattled. It's unceasing, and they've sent audio recordings, and, if I lived there, it would be interrupted. I don't know that we could do anything about it, but, there's also some concern going back to July 4th that I know everybody's concerned about the 2 or 3 weeks with the noise ordinance. And the people I've talked to wonder if we just give warnings, or if we ever fine individuals for the noise. How do we handle that when there's a violation?
Chief, how,
The ordinance is pretty ambiguous, so it leaves a lot of play. We actually have to witness it occurring, oftentimes, witness it. Frankly, it puts us in a difficult position, because oftentimes we're doing everything correct, parents are there, it's for them, meeting the building and all necessities, but it's just noisy.
7 a.m.
7 a.m. All right, thank you. You know, the noise ordinance is one of these things, it can be a can of worms. You open something up, and then, you start getting into decibels, and, but it's one of these things that truly irritates people, and I don't know.
particularly in a developing subdivision.
Absolutely.
Where you may be one of the first there, and then there's constant construction all around you.
Yes.
But boy, jackhammers at 7 a.m. would be pretty jarring.
Yeah. And the only other thing is, there are constituents that are concerned about, I've had some senior citizens call and worried about their water bill and wastewater proposals and a lot of things. And, I think we said that we would be, with the water bill, still giving the 15%. That would be, I would be in favor of even up to 20%. So just food for thought. There is concern out there, and I think we've heard concern as well. When you're on a fixed income, it gets rough. Considering they're used to like 50% discount. And then, where do we stand on the Rose Spring Park cleanup? poison ivy and the holes, and I still get people calling and contacting about that.
Yes, I shared the emails and pictures that were shared this morning,
Yeah,
have been shared with Public Works and Park and Recreation Department.
okay.
I may tear down the deck. We were gonna rebuild the deck, we may tear down the deck. And just be done with it. People can't sleep under it. They
Yeah.
can't.
You cleaned it out, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, Will, but you cleaned it out upon a request that I made about that. And in less than 2 weeks, I went back over there and it almost looked like it hadn't been touched, but I knew it was different because it was different things. So,
Until we get a design for that park,
Yeah.
I'm entertaining the idea of making the only entrance to the park down the street at the park level.
Okay.
And, plus we're going to get approval to start the bridge project before long. We just have to, the West Main Street beautification project. And that's gonna require significant work on the dry stack viaduct right behind the deck. So the deck's in our way to make repairs.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We started the Monday morning off with that email and those pictures. Greg? Good. You're good? Anything else come before the council? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.